The NCAA hammered Jim Harbaugh with sanctions on Wednesday, but the question is now, could they follow him to the NFL?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. We appreciate you, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
I'm sure Jim Harbaugh hoped that when he left Michigan that all of this NCAA sanctions nonsense would be behind him, but that is definitely not the case. The NCAA handed out some sanctions for Coach Harbaugh, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not concerned about that following him to the NFL level. Also, we got to talk about Easton Stick bouncing back, having a solid practice after a little bit of a shaky practice the day before, and AJ Finley seems like he is entrenched at this moment in time as the third safety on the depth chart.
Even though Jesse Minter wouldn't come out and just say it. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, we knew that Jim Harbaugh was fleeing, a storm of sanctions potentially from the NCAA when you think about the Connor Stallion sign stealing of everything, and also just him potentially having COVID meetings with players and stuff like that, which he ended up getting hammered for on Wednesday because the NCAA came out with their verdict and basically said he can't coach for 4 seasons of college football. He got a show cause for 4 seasons. If he goes back somewhere, he automatically has to stay away from the whole program for a year. But the good news is he signed a 5-year contract with the Chargers. So to me, this feels like a move where the NCAA can seem like they're coming down with an iron fist and really, delve out super punitive punishments that I don't think we've seen many times before, like giving someone a 4-year show cause, basically anywhere you go, you're going to get punished type of punishment. At the same time, like, to me, I'm not super concerned about this. I think this is something that he escaped and also might have played a factor in him, joining the Chargers, which I'm all for, but I'm not super concerned that this is going to be something he gets punished for at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about this either. I think this is something that happens at the college level a lot. I think that definitely if you look at different programs across the country and you really took a deep dive into everything that they do, I think you're going to find a lot more dirt than you would expect. Like, this is not something that is very uncommon at the college ranks. However, also, Jim Harbaugh has already reached the top of the mountain in college football. He's not going back. Okay, he's 60 years old. He signed a 5-year contract, like you mentioned. Everything that he wanted to accomplish at the college level is done. He already did that. He just won a national championship. Now it's on to the next challenge, and that is winning a Super Bowl.
And the thing is like, he could still go back to college football if he wanted to after the Chargers contract or even 4 years into the Chargers contract. But it's not something that I don't think, that I think they actually thought would affect him or that he would try to come back before that time runs out. I mean, he would have to have a literal, Urban Meyer type of experience where he's actually kicking kickers and things like that. And Jim Harbaugh, I'm sure, knew this was coming down the pipeline. And when he was talking at his press conference a couple of days ago, he was asked about, the potential sanctions. And he said this, which I thought was just hilarious. No one's perfect. If you stumble, you apologize, you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware, nor complicit in those said allegations, which is just like a mic drop. Like, yeah, when you do mess up, you should apologize for everything. Today is not that day, right? I mean, it was a Conor McGregor moment where I apologize to absolutely nobody. Yeah, right. Like, I don't think he's worried about this at all. And I do think the one thing that people have been bringing up as far as the potential of him actually getting punished at the NFL level is a couple of things. There is some precedent with Jim Tressel in 2011 getting away from Ohio State and the sanctions he faced there. And also, in October, you had Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport saying this: the NFL is unlikely to make itself a safe harbor for Harbaugh to escape what could be substantial NCAA discipline, league sources say, raising the strong possibility that Harbaugh would need to serve some or all of the possible suspension he could face in college if he returns to the pros. So I don't think that's going to happen. And I think when you think about the Jim Tressel situation, it's just a different situation. It's a less high profile position that he was going into as well. So I don't see it carrying over.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically becoming a replay official for the Colts, right? After he resigned.
Like someone that helps them with their replays and deciding whether they want to do a replay or not.
Right, yeah. This is like a staff member as opposed to the CEO of your football team, your head coach, right? So it's a completely different level. And also from the NFL's perspective, honestly, I think they're super excited to have Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL. He is a superstar coach. Like, he has a presence whenever he walks into a room, whenever he's in front of a camera. He has a very uniqueness about him that's magnetizing. He is a magnet for the cameras. He is somebody that you want to put on that big, bright stage because, one, he's a great football coach. Number two, he's a fantastic personality, and he has that track record star power to go along with it. I highly doubt that the NFL is going to go ahead and sit there and hammer him after he's been gone for a decade.
So it's important to know what happened with Jim Tressel. So basically, Jim Tressel got suspended 6 games in 2011 after he resigned from Ohio State. And, him resigning was somewhat of an admission of guilt right there, right? Which is different than Jim Harbaugh just leaving a great job for a great job, which is what he did. And then with Jim Tressel, it was also something that supposedly he suggested to the Colts. He didn't start that season until week 7. And I'm pretty sure Roger Goodell has been on the record saying, I would have suspended him had he not come forward and done that anyways. At the same time, first of all, good luck getting Dean Spanos to, suspend his shiny new object and the biggest coaching hire that Dean's ever made in franchise history. I don't think he's going to go along with that. And also, then you hear, what Jim Harbaugh's lawyer is saying, and it's like, there's probably a potential lawsuit here too. If they, chased after Jim Harbaugh for something that basically the NCAA said the biggest thing he did wasn't actual crime, but misleading them and not being upfront and all of those things. First of all, how funny would it be if just like tomorrow you saw Connor Stallions added to the Chargers staff as like a special teams, assistant, special teams quality control, and you have Connor Stallions out there just, for kicks like that. That would be
hilarious.
Oh my God. But like, if you hear like what Jim Harbaugh's lawyer is putting on Twitter, you kind of think he's carrying it with that same levity. He said, the way I see it from Coach Harbaugh's perspective, today's decision is like being in college and getting a letter from your high school saying you've been suspended because you didn't sign the yearbook. And it shows you, how dumb Jim Harbaugh's lawyer thinks it is. Obviously, he's going to say that. But I do think, does the NFL want that problem? Does the NFL want a lawsuit coming down because they're keeping Jim Harbaugh from working for something that the NCAA may or may not be able to prove?
Absolutely not. No way does the NFL want to have anything to do with anything that the NCAA is handing down, especially when you have the NIL stuff that's going on and you have all of the other things that college football is still trying to hammer out. Like, they do not want to have anything to do with what the NCAA is doing. And you don't have to worry about any of this recruiting stuff at all at the NFL level. Like, the NFL level is pretty cut and dry with the dates that they have for certain things for free agents. The rules are very clear. The Chargers know that. Jim Harbaugh knows that. No, those problems are not going to be manifesting themselves. Therefore, I feel like the NFL is going to be like, well, that was then, this is now.
And to me, it's just, they did this intentionally, right? The NCAA, which is kind of a made up, nonsensical form of power anyways. Like, the NCAA really has no power over anyone, especially if they're not in college football anymore. But I think just a way to, hey, he did this bad thing. They didn't strip him of any wins. They didn't strip him of his national championship, but they're saying, hey, 4 years, we're coming down really hard on it because they can after he signed a 5-year, $80 million contract in the NFL. So I think this will be a whole lot of nothing going forward for Jim Harbaugh. I would be shocked. And I mean, if the NFL did anything super punitive like that, I would really, really be shocked at this point. I just don't see it happening. But getting back to what actually happened at Chargers practice on Wednesday, it was great to see Easton Stick have a little bit of a bounce back because, man, the last couple of practice reports have been downright awful. And the Chargers signed another quarterback, which we're going to talk about as well. But nice to see, hey, Easton Stick maybe progressing a little bit, definitely having a better day. We're getting into that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board, right? LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a job, it might just be the right time that LinkedIn finds them, and you can find people who are already employed, and it could be a perfect fit. Because when you're talking about LinkedIn, I think the thing that clearly separates them from any other thing like them is the quality of candidate that you're getting. The fact that you shouldn't have to go and search for another candidate 2 months into it because the fit wasn't right. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hiring. So if you're not using it, you're in the wrong place. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, I think I was probably fiending for some good Easton Stick news, just with how dreadful the offense has been. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. You want to see not only the offense do okay with Easton Stick, who worst case scenario might have to start regular season games for them, which I'm still not buying at this point, but that is a possibility, right? There's a non-zero chance that happens. You want him to look good. And with how long he's been around, I think he should, even in a new offense. But it hasn't been that way. So it was really nice, per Eric Smith, to see him have a better day at Chargers training camp on Wednesday. According to Eric Smith, the team writer, which, right, he is the team writer, and he does a really good job, but he does work for the Chargers as well, right? So usually it's nice to have him and Daniel Popper so you can kind of bounce things off of each other. But I think, it's hard to dispute the facts I'm about to tell you right now, which is this. Chargers focus on red zone, and they went ones versus ones. Starting offense versus starting defense, which if you haven't gone to training camp, that doesn't happen a lot. Usually the first team offense plays the second team defense and vice versa. Yeah. They went ones versus ones, and it sounds like he should have scored touchdowns on 2 of the 4 plays. He should have had a touchdown to Stone Smart that ended up, he wasn't able to hit both of his feet in bounds, but he did have a touchdown to Simi Fehoko, but the defense ended up winning 3 out of 4 of those reps, which not great, right? 2 out of 4, I think you'd feel a lot better, especially with how well the defense has been playing for the Chargers. But then when the second team defense came in, which is still a unit the Easton Stick had been struggling against, Easton Stick was 3 out of 4 on touchdowns. DJ Chark also had 2 touchdowns. Simi Fehoko had 2 touchdowns. And I think, David, it is practice. It's first string, second string. But man, with how bad the reports had been from Chargers camp, just this offense as a whole looking, this was a nice breath of fresh air at the very least.
Well, I mean, hey, we just did a show a couple days ago about Coach Harbaugh calling out the offense, saying that they were lethargic and that they had heavy legs and they didn't have the level of focus that he expects them to have every single day. So maybe that was a wake-up call. I mean, you definitely know that was a message. I mean, that was him telling his team, especially on the offensive side, hey, what I saw was not good enough, and I need you to do better. I expect you to do better. And for, Easton Stick, to give him credit, he was able to make some plays today. He's able to put some good throws out there and not get intercepted multiple times in practice. He did get intercepted, but not multiple times. So at least he's building a connection. He's able to score with Simi Fehoko, which I think we haven't talked about enough. We got to give him a little bit more credit for what he's been doing and, him, battling it out, trying to secure one of those spots. But I love the fact that DJ Chark is making plays left and right. And it's not just been today. It's been, several days throughout practice. Seems like he's one of those guys that just needed an opportunity to get a new spot and with a new team, and he is in position to really shine.
Yeah, I think especially since Ladd McConkey's been out for a few practices. I mean, the 2 guys who I think have stood above the rest are Josh Palmer and DJ Chark.
Oh yeah,
who are going to be, more than likely 2 of your top 3 receivers going into the season. So I do like that from DJ Chark, and it's also nice, even with Easton Stick out there, he's still finding ways to make plays. And like I said, this might not seem like the most impressive thing from Easton Stick, but it's comparative, right? Like
Yeah.
This was because even after the Jim Harbaugh called them out, that Tuesday practice after that was terrible, according to Daniel Popper of The Athletic, and at least Easton Stick and that first string offense did nothing. This is what he said. Tuesday's practice was especially rough, per Daniel Popper. Threw an interception early on to Tarheeb Still, threw a deep ball to nobody, missed a wide open Donald Parham over the middle, missed an open Josh Palmer on a slant from the 1 yard line. Did have the play that the Chargers.com article wrote about, Josh Palmer coming up clutch and getting a touchdown late. Dan Popper said that probably also would have been a sack if they were playing for real. And then after that, had Josh Palmer open for another deep pass and just missed the throw. And there was a couple more too, but like, I don't think, I think maybe out of 6 or 7 drives somewhere around there, like the offense couldn't get anything going against the defense. And Greg Roman's out here saying we're where we need to be at this point, but man, like, it's hard not to get a little bit concerned just because, Justin Herbert will make this offense better, but he's not out there right now. And it just seems like for a good portion of, the last week, this offense has been totally sputtering since the injury to Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and obviously nobody ever wants to talk about Justin Herbert getting hurt and not being out there, and quite naturally, it's going to look different. Justin Herbert's a top 5 quarterback in this league. He can do things, like Easton Stick admitted, that only few people on earth are capable of doing.
But there's a difference between
he's not
being worse and being terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like, we all expect the offense to be worse. But I think you expect it with Greg Roman and the quarterbacks he's worked with and the backup quarterbacks that he's worked with, he could make something work where it's not looking terrible.
Yeah, well, I just wonder how much he's actually, in practice, game planning specifically to help and accentuate what Easton Stick does well, as opposed to just implementing the offense and putting in new plays and trying to, get everybody else sharp up to this point, because there's still the overlying expectation that Justin Herbert is going to be starting week 1. So how much of that, are you going to put on Greg Roman? How much of that are you going to put on Easton Stick? I think what you just want to see is at least when they strap it up and start playing games, that Easton Stick's able to go out there and make some plays and make you feel a little bit better about what you have been hearing about in training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we'll probably mention him tomorrow too when we get into the first preseason game on Saturday. So excited about that. Justin Herbert. I never expected him to really play anyway. So, but there's so many players I can't wait to see play live bullets, all that stuff. But yeah, man, I think the hard thing about this is it's just, kind of perpetuating the fears that Chargers fans already had about Easton Stick when they were mad that the Chargers only signed Easton Stick to be the primary backup after going 0-4, albeit in a really, really rough circumstance. But I think he's going to have to play exceptionally well in the preseason, make Chargers fans take a deep breath. But maybe there's hope. A new quarterback on the horizon. The Chargers did sign quarterback Luis Perez, who is a UFL star, right? I mean, led the UFL in completions, passing yards, and passing touchdowns last year. Donald Parham Jr., originally from the XFL, and has made it several years now in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, David, are just worried, like, okay, does this mean now the Chargers signing a quarterback, Justin Herbert's probably going to miss the first couple games of the season?
Absolutely not. This signing does not change my feelings at all about Justin Herbert starting week 1. I think it's probably, like we talked about before we started recording, a bigger indictment on the quarterbacks at the back end of the depth chart. Your Casey Bauman's, your Max Duggins, like, you're probably not really liking what you see from those guys. If you're bringing in a quarterback with about 3 weeks before the regular season starts, about a month before the regular season, that's not a lot of time for anybody to come in, no matter who they are, to be able to pick up an offense and be able to be successful. That's a really, really tall order. I also want to see how much Luis Perez is going to play, if he is going to play in the preseason, what those are going to look like. I don't know if we'll see him in this week. I think that's just a little bit too much to ask for him to come in on a few days of preparation and go and play a football game. I don't know if we're going to see that, but it definitely makes that quarterback room probably question itself. Like, did they sign him because of me?
And they should. I mean, honestly. And to me, this seems like, Easton Stick only has 1 season. You're talking about a guy from the UFL who was very good in the UFL. And I can't, pretend like I watched a ton of UFL games, but by those standards, he was very good. And I don't think, they're trying to get a starter or maybe even a main backup. But if they keep 3 quarterbacks and Max Duggan is totally useless, and I'm not saying that he is, But from what I've seen about Max Duggan, it hasn't been great, and it wasn't great last year when he wasn't able to even make the team coming out of camp. If they want to keep 3 quarterbacks and Justin Herbert's hurt, they might need somebody behind Easton Stick that is, a little bit more capable, a little bit, more experience. He's been with 3 NFL teams. He's played on a practice squad before.
Yeah.
They could want that. And maybe he turns into something that's a cheap backup for you down the road if he can prove his stuff, So we'll see what happens. This doesn't mean that Justin Herbert's not going to play. It also doesn't mean he will play in those first couple games, right? It just, to me, doesn't move the needle in either direction, where I think this is an indicator of Justin Herbert's timeline when Justin Herbert got hurt like 4 or 5 days ago, right? And was out that practice taking snaps. So I don't think anything happened from that moment to this moment that made the Chargers be like, oh my God, now we got to go sign another quarterback. And I don't think it's Justin Herbert related, basically, is what I'm saying. But we do have more to get into, including AJ Finley really taking off and controlling the safety 3 race on this team, a position that is not a starting position, but an important position. We're also going to get into Jesse Minter's thoughts on Alohi Gilman and his underrated versatility and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, and Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and the prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And I know we have a lot of San Diego Padre fans out there, a lot of San Diego fans out there. I can't think of many better things you could be doing right now than going to a Padre game at the best ballpark in the world, to me, but definitely in the country and in the MLB. Petco Park is awesome. Game Time will give you the best prices to go have a great, great night. I mean, you're never going to have a bad experience at Petco Park, even if the Padres are losing 10-0. Yeah, you can probably get Dodgers tickets or something on there as well. I mean, I wouldn't suggest going to a Dodgers game, but I would suggest if you are going to a Dodgers game, use the Game Time app because you're getting the best price, because if not, they will match it with 110% of the difference if you find the same tickets in the same row and section for less. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, I do want to talk about a guy who Jesse Minter called out after practice on Wednesday, especially as someone that seems like he's made a huge inroad into getting snaps defensively for this team. And coaches can say a lot of things, but their actions are always going to be more telling than the things that they say at the press conference. So we're going to talk about AJ Finley and also Alohi Gilman, who, such an underrated player as a 6th round pick, being able to do what he's been able to do. But thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On Chargers your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast, where you can get daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. David, AJ Finley is someone I don't even know if we knew what to think about AJ Finley going into this season.
Yeah, we're probably sleeping on him a little bit.
I mean, definitely. But what we did know is that it was a wide open competition at safety 3, because we also knew how we felt about JT Woods, which is just by no means is he going to just wrap this thing up or have it wrapped up going into this offseason. And it felt like between those two guys, they had the best chance of safety 3. Then you add, a Tony Jefferson into the mix, and then it comes a little bit more convoluted when you add a veteran like that. But it does feel like AJ Finley is pulling away. And when asked about it on Wednesday, Jesse Minter had this to say. AJ's having a really good camp right now. He's sort of elevated into that 3rd safety role. Excited to see him play, to hope that stuff he's doing now translates into live action, and I'm confident that it will. He's just a kind of steady presence, happy with where he's at, but certainly by no means has arrived. Still battling every day to earn playing time. And I get he's saying that, David, but to me it feels like AJ Finley has a chokehold of this 3rd safety position, at least going into the first preseason game.
Absolutely, he does. And I think that's a credit to him for, making the most of this opportunity, understanding that he had a real chance to change his status on this football team from a special teams player to somebody who's contributing on defense and has earned the comfort and the confidence of the players and the coaches around him, at least in practice. And, one of the other things that Jesse Minter said is, we'll see what happens when it comes to live action, because that's when the game's played. That's how the game is played. And that's how you're ultimately going to be able to round out the evaluation. He's doing all the right things in practice. He's making plays. But when it comes to game time, those plays are going to have to continue for him to really solidify himself as the third safety on this football team.
And even if JT Woods, who he said is having a good camp too, right? And he said, the live action will kind of let these battles take care of themselves, because that's really what's going to tell us what we need to know. But like, even if JT Woods, and it was the exact opposite, and he really was getting all the reps there, like, he would still have to go prove it. And that would be the most important part for him specifically, is going out there and making tackles and being physical enough to be counted on at the back end of a defense. So for AJ Finley, that is going to be an important part. But the reason I say that, don't take Jesse Minter's words too seriously is because your rotations at practice are going to be what gives you away. According to Daniel Popper, AJ Finley is always the third safety that comes on the field after Derwin James and Alohi Gilman. He comes in when Derwin James moves to the slot. And when Alohi Gilman missed practice for the birth of his baby, it was AJ Finley that got those starting reps. So if you think you have the guy, you're going to give him as many reps with the first team as you possibly can, because you only get so many. And you're going to put the guy out there most that you think is going to be on the field most. And that's just what it is. But speaking of somebody who came in, had to work their way up through special teams, Alohi Gilman has been awesome. And one of the guys that we were super excited to see get re-signed in the offseason. And one of the things that Jesse Minter spoke about during his press conference was the underrated versatility of Alohi Gilman's game. He said he's got a lot. He's got coverage. He's got skills. He can work in the deep part. He can blitz as well. And I think that is something that kind of, was a light bulb moment for me, because it's like, we don't really talk about that as much. But Alohi Gilman does wear a lot of hats, right? They use him to go cover guys in the flat on big downs. And he had, several fourth down stops last year that are hard to kind of show up in the stat sheet, just how important those tackles were. And he is kind of one of those guys that, has a knack for a playmaking, and also can move around and line up different places, and is kind of also a weapon for Jesse Minter.
Absolutely. I think Alohi Gilman deserves a ton of credit, because by all accounts, he's not an elite athlete, but he is extremely intelligent, and he always knows where he's supposed to be on the football field. And he has a knack for breaking up plays and making game-changing impact plays. And that's when it really matters. I mean, who cares if you're a super athlete in shorts and a t-shirt if you can't get the job done on the football field? The thing is, Alohi Gilman does get the job done on the football field, and really provided that, Batman, or that Robin to the Batman with Derwin James, to where you feel like you have a really, really athletically gifted and very intelligent safety group to go out there and combat whoever you want to try to take away.
Just an awesome dude too, it seems like, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just a
Great,
super
great
easy
attitude.
guy to root for. And I'm glad that he's been able to turn his career. I mean, they're, going into last season, we're like, oh my God, like the Chargers don't have Nazir Adams, who wasn't great, but like, what is Alohi Gilman going to be, right?
Yeah.
And he just went on to have his best season and got himself a second
Smashed
contract, which is life-changing. So glad that he was brought back, were the words of mine. And also Jesse Minter said that too. I'm also almost certain that Jesse Minter had a say in whether Alohi Gilman would fit into what he wanted to do defensively, and had a big part of him being back. But I do want to touch on a quote from Tito Abonia really quick, who has gotten mentioned recently by the coaches as someone who has stepped up in the interior of the defensive line, which they really need someone to. But he brought up how much better he can be because of how good the Chargers' edge rushers are. And this is what he said. It's really cool to see how they collapse that pocket really quickly. When you have edge rushers on like that, the interior guys really get to eat with some of our rushes, because the quarterback is getting forced inside so quickly. And then in the run, there's so much destruction going on, so much chaos with Mac and Joey and Tooley and Bud. I mean, those are all extremely violent players. First of all, I love to hear that, and it's true. And this is the thing he's talking about. When you hear about like collapsing the pocket, this is why it's important, right? When the edges can collapse the pocket and win on the outside, it means the quarterback can't escape out of the outside and has to step up into the pocket. If he has to step up into the pocket, that's that much closer that guys like Tito Abonia and Morgan Fox are to getting to him. So I do think he makes a great point here, David, and I think it's a reason to feel a little bit better about the defensive line unit, because they should be elevated by this insanely stacked edge room.
Every single different position group on the football field benefits from having a ferocious, technically sound pass rush group, and that's exactly what the Chargers have, and they are going to display that week in and week out.
And I think the thing is too, is like even in the run game, right? Like when you have guys who are setting that super physical edge and not giving up any ground, that makes running backs stop their feet. That makes them change direction, and they're probably changing direction into a 300-pound bear of a man. And, having someone like Scott Matlock whisper in their ear that he's going to like snatch their soul from their body. So like, it's just, it does make me feel better about it. Not that I haven't thought of that before, but hearing him kind of explain it just, I think, illustrates it well, why we can expect better pass rusher, or at least an elevated pass rush from this unit because of just how good those guys are. And the biggest thing will be them getting to obvious passing situations and being able to stay sturdy in the run. And all reports are, and that, we talked about Easton Stick struggling. Maybe the bigger concern is just how poorly the running game has been for the Chargers during this training camp, something we haven't talked about enough. We haven't been hearing about a lot of runs popping off. But that's a good sign for the Chargers defensive line. So it's give and take. And then when you're playing against your own team, there's good things for one side are always going to be bad things for the other side, which is why it's so great that Saturday we get a preseason game where it's the Chargers versus the Seahawks, and they get to go hit somebody and show that new level of physicality. And if the Seahawks practice on Wednesday is any indication, they are ready for the fireworks and the fisticuffs as well. So I'm so excited about it, and I'm so excited that tomorrow we're going to be talking about the players we're most excited about watching on Saturday and the guys we're going to be watching most closely for the everydayers out there. So to make sure you guys don't miss tomorrow's show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on our social media. You can hit me, find me at Dan Talk Sports on Twitter, David at Dro Talk SD, and the show's page at Locked On LAC. You can find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We will be getting into some fan mail stuff. Obviously, we missed a show this week, so we weren't able to get to it. But if you guys want to hit us up, you can do it on Twitter, or you can call into 323-524-7924. Put a 30-second Chargers question or a buy or sell in there for whatever show you want to get on, and there's a good chance it gets on the show. But that's going to wrap things up. Make sure you're back here tomorrow as we preview the Chargers' first preseason game and talk about the players we're most excited about. And even Jesse Minter called out one player in particular that you'll be interested to hear. He's very excited to watch. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.